Heyvan Iraqi News Update el est kuyuenj ITCL Farm Iran, highest BHD Biodia ING Bilinsit for Pulshi. For more than 2 decades, Iraq has been trapped between foreign occupation and Iranian hegemony, navigating foreign policy without a clear identity and exploited as a tool rather than a state. However, recent years, particularly since the events in Syria and the transformations taking place there, have opened a rare strategic window for Baghdad to quietly redraw its regional positioning with measured steps. Baghdad today is not turning against anyone, but it also no longer accepts its decisions being dictated by those outside its borders. In this context, a valuable opportunity is emerging for the West. Iraq, as it has not been for years, is establishing an independent position among the conflicting powers. If the West wants sustainable stability in the Middle East, it must heed the voice of the new Baghdad. From blind dependence to balance for many years, Iraq's foreign policy was characterized by submission to axes of coercion. Its foreign policy decisions were either reactive or conditional, governed by a fragile internal balance imposed by the reality of illicit weapons and regional pressure. However, the current Baghdad government, taking advantage of the moment of Iranian instability in Syria and Lebanon, has begun a clear repositioning. A repositioning that does not sever bridges, but one that rejects the possibility of these bridges being built unilaterally without its input and interests. Baghdad is operating today with a different logic, a state with constitutional institutions, seeking partnerships, not dependencies. This balance doesn't mean passive neutrality, but rather independence of decision-making and openness to all from a position of sovereignty, which the country is trying to regain even if it means disrupting its previous internal and external foundations. Actual transformation indicators this transformation is no longer just rhetoric or intentions, but has taken on concrete manifestations on the ground. In Syria, when fires broke out in Latakia this summer, Baghdad acted with rare speed, dispatching full firefighting teams through the Iraqi Ministry of Interior. This move attracted attention not only for its humanity, but also because it was independent of traditional Iranian coordination and reflected a direct approach to its relationship with Damascus, without intermediaries or parallel military wings. This is especially true given that Baghdad's move toward Damascus and the Doha meeting that preceded it surprised everyone. Internationally, Baghdad has reactivated its cooperation with Interpol and handed over internationally wanted individuals after years of procrastination. It also did something more symbolic. It removed the obstacles that had been hampering the BICS information sharing system with NATO, which had been used politically for internal balances. This demonstrates a genuine commitment to the international system, far removed from the game of Axis. In addition to security issues, Baghdad has begun to chart the contours of a new regional discourse. It no longer acts as an arm of any axis, but rather as a state that thinks in terms of interest and speaks the language of institutions. In Syria, wheat shipments were sent despite local shortages, as a message of political and humanitarian solidarity that transcended dictates. In Lebanon, it supported the government and state institutions after the recent war, instead of glorifying the logic of illegitimate weapons. At the Arab Summit, the Iraqi delegation played a pivotal role in bringing viewpoints closer together and refusing to politicize contentious issues. In Yemen, Baghdad hosted the internationally recognized legitimate government and allowed its discourse to resound from the heart of the capital, a clear shift from the balance of power that had previously tended toward ambiguity or passive neutrality. Why should the West listen? Because Iraq is not just a security problem or an area of influence, as it has traditionally been viewed, but rather has a real opportunity to become a balancing state in a turbulent environment. Continuing to ignore this transformation or treating it with suspicion or patronage will reproduce the same failures that have characterized Western relations with Iraq for decades. Conversely, however, building a realistic partnership based on supporting institutions, not individuals, may give Iraq the strength to fully liberate itself from the grip of transnational groups and projects. If the West wants a stable partner in the region, it will find no more opportune moment for Iraq to become its highest democratic experiment in shaping the new Middle East. Baghdad is quietly distancing itself from Tehran, without provocation, but it is doing so with determination. It is rebuilding its external legitimacy with rational, non-confrontational rhetoric, but at the same time, it refuses to accept a return to the squares of subordination. This is a truly Iraqi moment, and the West must listen carefully. Iraq is no longer a forsaken arena or a no man's land. but a country learning the lessons of its past and confidently advancing toward a balanced role that reshapes the regional landscape. Far removed from blind alignments and vengeful rhetoric, if Baghdad is given a real chance, it may regain its status as a central state that leads rather than is led, that balances rather than is dragged, but it needs to be treated as a head, not a tail, a partner, not an appendage, and viewed as a potential anchor in the new global economic system, not as a marginal state subject to the blackmail that has exhausted it for half a century. And even under such harassment, these contractors want into Iraq so bad and are willing to put up with it. They know the money to be made. IQR demands security guarantees and transparent payments to resume Kurdistan's oil exports, stressing a 1 billion month losses. While welcoming Baghdad, Erbil talks firms await written deals to unlock stalled foreign investments and boost Iraq's energy sector recovery. Amid ongoing disruptions in oil exports from the Kurdistan region and a recent attack on a private oil facility called Miles B. Kagan's issue, spokesperson for the Association of the Petroleum Industry of Kurdistan, APIQR, reaffirmed the consortium's commitment to Iraq but stressed the need for protection, transparency, and swift action by the Iraqi and Kurdish authorities. Speaking in an exclusive interview with Kurdistan 24 called, Kagans denounced the recent assault on a private oil production facility, calling for immediate accountability. We want the perpetrators to be caught. And as the government of Iraq has said, we want them to be punished swiftly and severely. He stated, he emphasized that APIQR member companies operate as private entities, and it is the responsibility of the Iraqi federal and Kurdistan regional governments as KRG to ensure their safety. Trust in Iraqi investigative process, but security concerns persist, referring to statements made by Iraqi Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani. Kagans noted, we trust that he will have his team do a quick and detailed investigation. He added that the unique nature of Iraq's security environment often results in contradictions. On one day, you can have an attack in the morning and a deal signed in the afternoon. He dismissed any suggestion that the Iraqi government was behind the attack, but warned of destabilizing actors. Some group is doing evil, while there are arrangements for new oil deals that are happening between HKN and the Central Federal Government of Iraq. Risk assessment and continued investment amid political volatility. APUR, comprising 8 member companies including HKN, has collectively invested over $10 billion in the Kurdistan region since February 2005 at the height of Iraq's civil war. Our companies have remained committed through the threats of ISIS, Kagan said, while acknowledging that each company must independently assess risks daily. He cautioned that attacks like the recent one are dangerous and disruptive, which may prompt companies to temporarily halt operations while reassessing their security posture. Still, he stressed, there's risk and then there's also reward, stalled exports and financial transparency. APIQR's demands, the prolonged closure of the Iraq-Turkey pipeline now over 2 years, has cost all stakeholders an estimated $100 billion per month. Kagans revealed that on July 12 APIQR met with KRG and federal officials to present conditions for resuming exports. Chief among them is a transparent payment mechanism that addresses outstanding dues. We need to have transparency for how we will receive payments, he said. The direct cash or in-kind payments via barrels of oil facilitated by Sumo. We want paper, we want signatures, we want stamps, Kagans asserted, underlining the need for contractual guarantees. APIQR has also proposed an escrow system through an international bank independent of Iraq's financial institutions to secure payments. International price advantage and revenue potential. Kagans emphasized the economic urgency of restoring international sales. The oil that is sold on the international market is around $70 per barrel, and the oil that is sold locally is only about $30. He underscored that resumed exports would generate more state revenue, enabling Baghdad to address salary arrears and invest in infrastructure. We believe that our business of producing and selling oil should not be caught into the budget disputes between Erbil and Baghdad, he added. Pipeline reopening, a test of political will. Kagans highlighted recent Iraqi and Kurdish statements as signs of progress. Prime Minister Sudani, in a recent meeting with the U.S. Embassy and HKN representatives, expressed renewed intent to reopen the Iraq-Turkey pipeline. We have seen many statements. Now we want to see proposals for written agreements, said Kagans. He urged all parties to remain at the table and finalize a solution that benefits all Iraqis. APIQR, he added, is optimistic that a resolution may come in the coming weeks. Cooperation with international stakeholders and consultant oversight. APIQR member companies have engaged with the US and British governments, pressing for a pipeline reopening. We want to attract more foreign investors, said Kaggins, who affirmed that once agreements are signed, exports can resume within days. APAC supports the involvement of an independent consultant to audit production and costs. All companies will fully cooperate. We insist that the calculations are made with the sanctity of our contracts, he said, noting that Iraq's federal courts and Ministry of Oil have affirmed the legitimacy of these contracts. Accepting Article 100 toward the path to implementation, according to Kaggins. IMCR member companies accept Article 12 of Iraq's federal budget law and have submitted oil export principles accordingly. The group awaits written contracts to activate implementation. Production is different at each field. What's important is that our companies agree and accept the budget law, he explained. Investment freeze and future outlook. Since the pipeline shut down, companies have had to pause $400 million in planned investments. Once operational, each company will reevaluate new ventures, including drilling and increasing capacity. Kaggins stressed that APAC supports Iraq's goal of increasing exports from 4 million to 6 million barrels per day within 3 years. We want to increase the amount of oil that our companies are able to produce and export that oil to international markets, he said. Resolve cooperation and economic recovery. Kaggins concluded with a call for unity and urgency. The government's actions in the past week have shown a new level of seriousness. He said elected officials now recognize the need to resume exports to fund salaries and public services. And if you have money to pay, you need to make more money, and a good way to do that is sell oil internationally.